Welcome to the Habitat Podcast, the podcast for wildlife habitat management, hunting strategy, and land stewardship. And now, your host, Jared Van Hees.
Welcome to the Habitat Podcast.
I'm your host, Jared Van Hees, and we are here to become better habitat managers. Guys, thanks for tuning back. We have my good friend, Mr. Chase Burns out of Illinois on today. And we're talking a lot about his program called Land Your Ground and what that means to him, what he's been up to with his new podcast and video journey, as well as his habitat plans. He's been on the podcast a couple other times. Great guest to have. And it's just great to talk about, more uses of what we can do with our properties that we have. So I know mainly the goal is usually wildlife habitat, animal habitat here at the Habitat Podcast, but there are other things we can do to benefit from our land and to, get more use out of our land too. So great episode with Chase. I hope you guys like it. When you're done, go ahead and run over to his podcast, give him a subscribe or a follow, wherever you follow on Spotify or YouTube videos as well. Again, great guest here today. Thanks for tuning back to the Habitat Podcast. Guys, I want to thank everybody who purchased a hoodie in the first hoodie order. All those orders are shipped. Shipped them all yesterday. So we got the orders in. We shipped them out within, looks like, a total of 2 weeks. So thank you for everybody who contributed. The hoodies are awesome. I love them. I've been wearing mine every day. And guys, I want to thank our Patreon members. We are having a blast in our private Marco Polo group. It's like a video chat back and forth, looking at projects. Our buddy Joel has been planting hundreds of trees on his property. Our buddy Scott's been doing some trapping. I've been out frost eating, doing a little shed hunting. So guys, it's such a great group to be in. I urge you to check it out if you haven't. There's a link in the show notes below to be part of the Patreon group. And Jason even talked about putting together a special pig hunt next year. So we got some cool stuff going on there in the Patreon group. If you guys want to check it out, get closer to the Habitat Podcast world, that's a great way to do it. All right, guys. Well, we'll be back next week with another great episode. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy this one with Chase Burns.
Hey, guys. Al here, Vitalize Seed. I hope you all are doing well. So we got a lot of new things happening at Vitalize this year, and I wanted to highlight some of those. First off, we got a brand new website. We just added a chat feature to that website so you can get your answers to your questions in real time or as fast as possible. Those actually come directly to us, so we can answer those questions, as well as has some auto answer features for those frequently asked questions. So trying to further increase the customer service that we offer. Number two is we are offering bundles now. So we got a lot of questions about people trying to piecemeal things together. So we took the guesswork out of it for you. You want a fertility bundle? Add that to your cart, and it gives you all of our natural fertility products in one place. We also are adding bulk pricing. So been asked about this in the past, and we've done some, kind of one-off things. But for those people who are buying, 5, 10, 15 acres, depending on the product, we're going to be offering some bulk pricing options for that. So right now we got that up on Nitro Boost. We also are going to have that up for the Clover, Chicory, and Oats offering, and might expand that to other offerings as well. Other things are new products. So we got our annual Clover. That's a fantastic product for frost seeding and also for this early spring, especially for those who still want to plant Nitro Boost. They want to get that annual Clover established. You could go in and drill your Nitro Boost right through, broadcast through it, mow it off, spray it off, etc. We got our Premium Clover Plus. I'm using that on all my logging trails. That's a fantastic product. I'm also using that often with our Clover, Chicory, and Oats mix. So I might use Clover, Chicory, Oats in the first year on my logging trails like I did last fall. Let those oats come in, they'll die off, and then I can frost seed my Premium Clover and Chicory over top of those trails now. So those are areas where I want a perennial crop growing. So I'm using that mix. And then we added our brassica mix as well. We, of course, have our seed feed and seed armor. Those are selling fantastic, and various other products, guys. So please check us out at vitalizeseed.com. We sure do appreciate you, and we're looking forward to a fantastic 2025.
All right, guys, we're back with my good friend, Mr. Chase Burns. How you doing today, Chase?
I'm doing great, Jared. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. Guys, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've heard this voice before, seen this mug. He's been on episode 23, and we're going back in time there. Talked a lot about edge feathering, talked a lot about your farm. Then you were on episode 136, which is another great one. We kind of focus more on infrastructure, ingress, egress, just really, really good stuff. Great information that maybe doesn't get talked about as much. Maybe people are covering it more now than they used to, but back then when we did those podcasts, man, those are gold. So welcome back to the show.
My pleasure. You guys have had a lot of high caliber habitat gurus on since I stumbled in the door. So hopefully, hopefully I'll live up to your new standard.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you being humble, but you are a guru in your own right. And I mean, we're going to talk about that today. So why don't you tell everybody who hasn't gone back? We have a lot of new listeners that show up to this
Sure.
podcast that start at the beginning and catch up, and maybe some guys haven't gone back yet. So let's hear
Yeah.
about who you are, Chase, where you're from, and what you do for a living, and we'll get into all the fun stuff because you're like me. You do 25 things at once. So
Yeah. Well, I don't have any trouble sleeping at night because we run really hard all the time. So, when my head hits the pillow, I'm out instantly. But, so Chase Burns, I am, officially what I would call middle-aged. So welcome to that club when you get there. And, I started out, as just a country boy here in West Central Illinois. Grew up on a farm, hunting, fishing, camping, chasing anything with a BB gun that moved and that sort of stuff. Pursued a wildlife biology degree at Southern Illinois University, and been moved back to this area, got married, and kind of set roots and all that. And slowly over time, like I grew up around real estate, so both my parents were selling real estate, and I just kind of knew the ins and outs of real estate investing, and thought about doing real estate full time at that time and didn't. Wanted to do something every day that I was super passionate about. And at the time I just didn't understand how that could possibly be real estate. It just, there were things about it. Like I love land, and I like people a lot. So I just hadn't seen how those two things could be married together in a career at that point in life. So started doing a lot of habitat work while I was doing other jobs, doing construction, and then got into a government job that was overseeing construction management projects, things like that, and a base ops contractor on a DOD base. And eventually my dad told me one day he was going to retire out of real estate. And I was like, wonder if maybe that is a career that I should pursue. Cause I love my parents, get along great with them, get along even better with them when I don't have to work out of the same space every day. So I was like, is there such a thing as like just selling land and not having to do houses and commercial stuff and whatever? And he's like, there is, but and I'm like, it was becoming a thing, few programs and things at that time in the early 2000s, mid 2000s through the late 2000s. It was really starting to become a little bit more of a public thing that like, land specialist is actually a real thing. And, anyway, so he's like, just in this area, they kind of discouraged me, and they're like, you got a good career. You don't want to go that direction. You know what it was like growing up around us in real estate every day. And it's a roller coaster, and it's just, feast or famine. And they told me all the downsides, which I already knew. And then they said, well, in this area, you're going to really struggle to just focus on land. It's just not a big enough, there's not enough ground that moves, and there's only a few outfits, and they do all the farmland sales and stuff. And you're just not, you'll eke out a living. Good luck. And they love me, so they were giving me that, cautionary wisdom. But I'm a poor listener sometimes, so I went ahead and did it anyway. And so started this, trail down into professional real estate sales and specializing in land, agricultural, recreational hunting type properties, and thought, I think I can make this marry really well with doing land management work and kind of running two businesses at the same time, make them feed each other. I saw the symbiosis there and thought, I think I can do this. I don't have to be wealthy, but if I can pay the bills and I can, have a farm and I can be working outside and doing, digging in the dirt one day and helping somebody live out their land dream the next day. That's what I want to do. And so I, started down the real estate trail, did that for a year or two while I was still working the government job, and just nights and weekends and all my holidays and days off and whatever. And finally there came a point where you got to just jump out of the nest and do it. And scary as that is for anybody who's done that, left a corporate job or left a whatever, this, security of a salary and health insurance and retirement, whatever. We did it, and, God blessed our stupidity, what we didn't know at the time. But It's been, hard when you first take that leap and get going into it, but the land management business, I was correct in that definitely opened doors in the land sales business and vice versa. And um, it is not a perfect juggling act between the two, but for 6 or 8 years, I did both at a pretty high level. And it's just the daily grind of like trying to figure out, am I going to be running a chainsaw all day today, or do I have to get cleaned up in the afternoon and I got to go meet some people and sign some papers, or I got a closing first thing in the morning and then I'm going to be in a skid steer all the rest of the day. And it was constantly back and forth between those two things and having land management employees. We have a company, Dogwood Land Management, and both were doing really well, but at the time, you can't be in two places at the same time. So trying to grow two businesses like that, you can only get to a certain ceiling before you are the bottleneck, you are the limiting factor, and neither one can grow, and they constantly fight each other for your time. So after 2000, the real estate market just blew up, and it's kind of a blessing and a curse at the time. At the time, I lost a lot of sleep about it because I'm like, this means we're going to have to really throttle back Dogwood Land Management. I didn't want to. I love it. I'd rather be in the woods a lot of days, planting something, sticking a tree in the ground, or hanging stands, or opening a food plot, or putting in a bridge across the creek, whatever. And like, I didn't want to quit doing that stuff, but this job in the office, it pays the bills. Like for your time, it's 2 to 3 or 4 times as profitable as it is for me to be working in a labor position or overseeing a crew of guys and stuff. So it was just, too much business sense made to like, okay, God's opening this next chapter of our lives, and it's going to look like a whole lot more real estate. You've learned the ins and outs of what it takes to improve properties firsthand by doing this for so long. And now you're going to teach other people how to do it. And you're going to just get into helping people get into that first piece of property or their next farm or whatever, and spend your time doing that. And so, at this point, I'm middle-aged, I guess I'd say. So I have become a little bit better listener. So like when I heard that, I said, okay, Lord, I guess you're right. I'll just focus on this a lot more. So Dogwood Land Management still exists, but we do not have any full-time employees. And it's basically, I do some habitat consulting work. We do a few select habitat projects when it's a project or a client that we really want to do work for. Just, we get to really kind of handpick, but it's far and few between because the majority of my time is spent working with buyers and sellers, helping them find the right hunting property or the right piece of land for their cattle or their livestock operation, or getting somebody to, hopscotch out of town and into the countryside so they can have a homestead and do all that stuff. And then having made that transition, I'm like, there still aren't ever enough hours in the day. And I need the ability to have more conversations. I need to be able to interface with more people like this, talk to them, teach them, tell them what they don't know, inspire them, and help them get to the point where they have, the mindset and the courage and the knowledge, the information to make that purchase and go, live out the land dream. And so that's where Land Your Ground as a video podcast came from. And it was just that it lets me talk to a whole lot more people like, and then once they've heard enough from me that they're like, I need to talk to this guy one-on-one, then they call or they email, they shoot us a message, and it goes from there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's quite the background. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, they're synergistic with each other. Like the habitat consulting and the habitat work you've done over the years, which is, we talked to you about that last time, the very first time, that's going to make you a better agent in the woods too, selling ground, right? So you're going to be that much more intellectual and know what you're talking about out there. And now doing the Land Your Ground stuff, that should in turn feed you leads eventually through that too. And it all just kind of works vertically integrated, which is awesome. We do a lot of the same stuff here at the podcast. And I think that you're doing something you love, right? So that always helps.
100%. And like I said, I didn't know years ago that this career existed. But if I had seen somebody doing it, I think I would have caught on a lot sooner. That I would just been like, man, I would love that, to do what I do every day is a blessing, because it's real estate definitely has plenty of challenges and stress points and whatever. But day to day, I absolutely love that I get to work with landowners. I love that I get to help people make big decisions, and that they look to me for consults, and just be an advisor on a lot of that stuff is humbling, but also, I mean, it's fun. You get to be like a coach, if you've ever coached kids sports or whatever, it's like, oh, there's plenty of frustrating parts about it, but at the end of the day, you don't do it necessarily. It's not about the pay or the whatever. It's a lot of the reward comes from just like, you see somebody improve, you see somebody reach their personal best, or somebody meets that milestone of now they just became a landowner. And like, man, that's so gratifying.
I love the coaching metaphor there. I think, yeah, I coach my girls' basketball team right now, and yeah, that there's just no pay for that. So the 4 days a week I do that is it's very rewarding watching them get better, watching their friends get better, and
Yeah.
so to be able to be there for something like that is pretty fulfilling. And even in the land game, the land specialist, a lot of terms for that now. What would you say? How long have you been in that, and what would you say that market's like? I feel like the podcasts, the habitat companies, the land specialists, there's new ones popping up every single day, I feel like. So
Sure.
how do you feel about that market and kind of where you're at? Did you get in at the right time? Is it too late to start something like that? What's your thoughts about all that?
I got in at the right time for me, because I would not have been ready, or maybe would not have had the wisdom. I mean, you can cut your teeth into most job fields at some point in life and struggle through it and figure it out. But land sales is one of those things where real estate in general, there are a lot of people selling real estate that should never have gotten into real estate. It has something like a 78% failure rate. So which means, 78% of the people who become a licensed broker go through 90 or 120 hours worth of training, and pay all the license fees and pass exams and whatever. They don't renew after their first 2-year term.
Wow.
So, they just figure out it's not for them, or they go that whole first year and they only get one sale or none. And so there's just a vast majority of people that just either can't cut it, or can't weather the storm, to really get onboarded and get to a point where it's profitable, they're successful. Or a lot of people, frankly, don't have the right ethics. They don't have the right mindset. They're not a coach. They're not a person who truly wants to help people. Their interests are solely focused on self, and it's, I want to look good. I want to feel important. I want to make a lot of money. I want to whatever. And eventually, all of those, if those are your drivers, you're going to end up in failure, because it's the only way that you will be successful in this business long term is if you have high ethical integrity and you truly care to help people, because you have to put others before yourself every single time. And the minute you start thinking like, oh yeah, well, I could, if I tell this person that or whatever, and you leak a little bit of information and a deal happens so that you can get paid, well, you might benefit in the short term from something like that financially. And I see it happen way too often. But eventually word gets around that you can't be trusted. You're, sleazy, or you're whatever. And like those people are in every profession. This is not a real estate specific thing,
Right.
but the failure rate is really high. And that is one of the factors. It's just the minute somebody gets too hungry or whatever and thinks, I just got to pay bills. So I need this thing to close. So I'm just going to make sure this thing closes. Like, you have forgotten about your client's best interests, and you are solely just trying to make a deal finish so that you can get paid and move on to something else. And so I think new people coming into the industry, that is not a new phenomenon. That has probably been around as long as the real estate business has been a thing. I would say it has gotten harder for people to fake it and make it. It's harder for people to, news travels so fast today. So if you are corrupt, or you're doing anything that's, under the table, you betray somebody's confidence and you say something that you shouldn't have said, that was, confidentiality breach or whatever, there's a lot of instances where like everybody's going to hear about that, and it won't take very long, and you'll have a reputation for being somebody that people should not trust their money with, or their assets, or so I think those types of people get weeded out, hopefully a little faster than maybe they would have 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. There were probably some people that were doing that kind of stuff for decades and made their whole career in it, and they screwed plenty of people over, but most people never heard about it or knew it. And so I think new people, if they're thinking about, and I'm talking in generalities about all real estate right now, but if somebody were interested in getting into real estate and selling real estate professionally, you wanted to specialize in land and that sort of thing, there are a number of big companies now, brokerages, that some of them are regional, some of them are nationwide. And, the good ones that have been around a while have pretty solid marketing platform, and they have, hopefully some of them have some tech tools and things that, are at the broker's disposal that will help them be successful. But the one of the biggest things that they should be looking for is dealing with somebody who is going to mentor them. When I first got into land sales, thankfully I had my parents, I had my mom and dad that had been selling for so long that if I had a question about something, and not a specific, like, hey, so and so wants to know this or that, but in generality, what do you do in this type of scenario? Or what's the best way to handle this? And just, I learned a lot from them, but I joined with a company that didn't give me a whole lot of guidance. I was pretty much on my own, and it was like, yeah, go list some properties and send them to us, and we'll stick it up on our website, and you know, you'll make some money. And I was like, oh, that's not really what I thought we were doing. I thought you guys
Yeah.
would teach me up here a little bit. And so, the first couple of years, that just wasn't the case. And now, for the last 8+ years, I've been with a company that is really what I would consider a team. They treat each other like family. They support each other, and they really help. They want all of the other brokers to be as successful as possible. So there's a lot of like knowledge or wisdom sharing, and just like, hey, I did this piece of marketing and it's really working out well for me, and you should try this. And just, so their real estate marketing and the business in general has evolved a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. And some new person that would come in that's more tech savvy than I am is going to have a major advantage in certain capacities. You're laughing about because it's true. But what we lack in that, I guess you can always outsource that stuff if you can get the right people to come to your rescue at the moment. But the biggest advantage that we bring to the table is experience and wisdom and knowledge about the assets that we're selling, understanding the market, and just being a better negotiator. Being the person that can help your client reach the best possible outcome. You got to understand their goals and figure out how best to get them there instead of just doing whatever you think is best. You got to really be listening to your client. Man, you got to give
Yeah.
me another question because I just rambled
No,
on and on about that one.
I like that. I think I'm out, and I was gonna say you can't fake it till you make it in this market, and you took that already. I like that. I think what you do that I like is you build trust, and you're trustworthy, you're honest. I can tell, and that people can see that, people can read that. Like, people are too smart these days. You can't pull the wool over somebody's eyes, maybe like in the past. And I mean, there was just a real estate deal that somebody who was in trouble for poaching, a few years back, got into real estate. Something went wrong the other day, and I interviewed the guy years ago on here out of Illinois, and he went off on the internet, and and it took one Facebook post.
Yeah.
And this guy slandered and everything else, and there were some bad things that went down in this land deal, and it's just like you just have to. I mean, I would say just be yourself as long as you're a good person. And that's gonna shine through. If you're not a good person, that's just gonna shine through, I guess.
Well,
too.
I hope they are themselves either way, because the business will sort them out. But
Right.
yeah, I absolutely love what I do because the vast majority of the people that I do work around are amazing. And
Awesome.
The other people, generally speaking, that get into land specialization or ag land or recreational land sales, that sort of thing, or management, are in it because they absolutely love land. They love the outdoors. They generally, because of that, it leads them down the rabbit trail, your guys' direction, to habitat development, and they just have a hunger for it like we do. So they're constantly learning, consuming more, and they're fun people to talk to. They're fun to interact with and work with and help because, we share so many common passions.
I love it. I love it. So that led you to kind of where you're at now. A couple of years ago, I don't remember the exact date, you came out with your video podcast, Land Your Ground, which is more than a video podcast. It's a whole idea How did that come about, and what is that? Define that. I want to get my listeners to understand and know that there's another resource out there that they can go to and listen, as I do to your podcast. So tell us about that and what that is and what the ethos there is.
Yeah, thanks. So Land Your Ground is a video podcast that we call for landowners and dreamers. The topics are going to range a lot from different land ownership, farming, ranching, homesteading. It's basically we're located here in Western Illinois, but we kind of are predominantly Midwestern focused. We've had a couple guests that branch out and go, further east. We'll have some coming up soon that get us further west. But predominantly we're in the heartland, the central United States. We've had maybe a little northern United States or southern Canada too, is some of our audience up there. But the goal is to help people understand, like, who owns the land in this area, how are they using it, what are they doing with it to make it profitable. So how do they finance it? How do they help pay for it? Because land is just increasingly more and more and more expensive and seems to be just like less attainable for the common man, right? So the idea, the concept with the name alone, Land Your Ground, is just to help people land their ground and to get people to the point where they are more knowledgeable, better prepared. We can help kind of lay out a path of what it takes to become a landowner for the first time, or to buy that next piece of tract for their operation, or expand the homestead or whatever, and just understanding the ins and outs of that, and then sharing stories, bringing in guests that can give them inspiration, people that are literally doing it, people who started at ground zero with no family money or no big high paying job and that sort of thing, and figuring out, like, how do I buy my first piece of property, and then maybe leapfrogging into a bigger piece a couple of years later, or buying one piece and then selling it and buying two, and then eventually just, growing, some of them almost an empire of, I don't want to say land barons, but for the young person beginning out that might struggle with the concept that, I don't know how anybody could afford this. It's so crazy expensive. I'll never be able to be a landowner. And that's just false. Is it getting harder? Yes, it is, which makes it even more critical that you figure it out as early as possible in life. If that is a major goal for you, then we want to be, right there in their corner and surround them with a community of people that are going to help them figure out how to do that and be successful.
I love that. And you refer to that stage as the dreamer stage, right? People who, I want to do that someday. It's so expensive. I don't know if I can. And you help guide them through to at least become more knowledgeable on how to get that done.
Yeah. So that was my turning point personally. I've always been a dreamer, and to my folks' I guess dismay at some points in life, they would say, get your head out of the clouds, kid, or whatever. But I've always had big goals, things that I really wanted to do. And one of them, of course, was always to own a farm. I grew up playing around on, two of my grandparents had farms. My dad's parents, my mom's parents both had a farm. They weren't really farmers. They had some livestock. But they had actually really similarly sized pieces. And I was blessed to have access to both of them growing up, hunting, camping, shooting, doing whatever, playing around, riding side by sides their horses and stuff. And it was a lifestyle that I had the luxury of enjoying because they owned a farm. And when I was headed off to school, I was a smart kid that just hated school. And I have two boys at home, and one of them is just like that. So I know exactly the struggles he's about to face in life. So I knew if I was going to pursue a degree that it better be something that I was just super passionate about. Otherwise, I didn't want to do it. I wanted nothing to do with 4-year school after, graduating from my senior year. And so I studied wildlife biology. And somewhere about the second or third year of that, I was talking with some other students who were graduating, became buddies of mine, and they were looking at jobs with Pheasants Forever and National Wild Turkey Federation, Ducks Unlimited. And this is, date myself again, but this would have been mid 2000s, well, like 2003, 4, 5 timeframe. And some of these starting jobs were $28,000 to $31,000 salaried, not hourly. So, and they were going to work you probably 50 to 70 hours a week. And I thought idealism was, I'm going to pursue a career in this because life is short and I want to do something that I really enjoy every day, and working with conservation, wildlife, and building habitat and doing all that stuff sounds amazing. I'll work hard. I'll come home tired, and I'll have a beautiful wife and kids, and life will be good. even though I don't have any money. But sometime about in that time frame, it occurred to me that my grandparents were getting elderly and just, getting up there in years, getting to the point where like I'm like, those folks, they're not gonna be around forever. And when they pass, what's gonna happen to that farm? And there's multiple kids. So natural succession, normally in a farm family like that, if one of them isn't interested in taking over the operation, buying the others out, holding on to it, it's either split up or sold. And I had, I guess, a revelation at some point in time that it was like my kids who didn't exist yet at the time, I was like, they are not going to grow up with that luxury, because if those farms are sold before they ever are old enough to know any different, whatever, if I can't become a landowner on their behalf, they will not have the same opportunity or those experiences that I had growing up. And that revelation just like changed everything for me. And I was like, man,
Wow.
I want to work in habitat. I want to be in the conservation field every day. But if the decision has to be made that like I get to go do a job that I absolutely love 8 hours a day and come home and have no money and my kids never have a place to hunt that isn't public land, or I go slave doing something all day long that who cares what it is, but it pays well enough that when I come home, I have afforded to purchase and own and manage whatever a farm that they get to grow up on and do all of the things that I grew up, hunt, fish, camp, shoot, play around, ride horses, all that stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll do that all day long. I'll take the sacrifice and go do whatever I got to do all day long to make enough money to come home and make sure that that lifestyle exists for them. And I'm glad I had that revelation when I did instead of when I was 35 or 40, because I hear that all the time from people who are about my age that are like, oh, I wish I'd have bought land way, back in my 20s, or I wish I would have whatever. And they got busy out of school and weren't focused on it and whatever until they realized my kids are growing up and the most outdoors they've ever seen is on a soccer field.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
they don't have that sort of life experience, and it just because they never made it a priority, and now they're trying to like race to make it happen and capture some of that before the kids are grown and gone out of school, out of college, whatever. And it's like it makes me that much more focused on the mission of educating younger people in their 20s, 30s, and even early 40s that like it is not too late and you are not too young to be thinking about this and figuring out how to make it happen, because it won't happen overnight. But you need to find that community, find the information, and be really plugged in and focused on it, or it will never happen. And you'll find yourself 45, 50, 60 years old and you'll just wished you had. And you won't be able to rewind the clock and do anything about it.
This segment is brought to you by Downburst Cedars. Guys, I've been using a Downburst up at the Northern 70 on my 5 acres of food plots. And man, did I have success last year with this machine. This attaches to the back of, could be a tractor. I use my quad, could be a side-by-side. Precision seeding, precise seed rates. It's compact, it's lightweight, simple operation. I fill and go, fill and go, fill and go. And I had a perfect stand of Nitro Boost and carbon load up at the Northern 70. That's right, Doug designed this thing to take vitalized seed mixes, which is a very diverse program. We use a vitalized Doug's Downburst DS860 drop seeder will do it, and I've used it and I love it. Guys, it's all aluminum. This thing is beautiful. It's a Northern Michigan made piece of art, like I've said before. I urge you to check it out. Doug's been making these himself, shipping them out to our listeners one by one. And man, if you want something to plant expensive seeds like clover, brassica at the exact rate, check out a Downburst Cedar. Doug over at downburstcedars.com will get you taken care of. Tell them Habitat Podcast sent you. There's even a discount for you.
This podcast is brought to you by Latitude Outdoors. Guys, Latitude Outdoors is one of the top saddle hunting manufacturing companies in the world, here headquartered in Michigan. Guys, I've worked with Kevin, Alex, the guys over there at Latitude. I've been using their products for over 3 seasons here at Habitat Podcast. The first deer I shot was that first big buck on the 15 acres out of my Method 2 saddle. That buck, I shot him out of the saddle using the climbing sticks, the platform, everything to get up, and that saddle is just very versatile when selecting a tree. It's the first time I hunted that tree on the 15 acres. I climbed up that day and was able to make the shot and a follow-up shot on that buck in that saddle. Guys, the saddle is so easy to use. You literally strap it on like a seat belt, like a belt. It's all ropes. There's no metal components. There's no chinging and banging and clunking. I wrap it around, I step into it, I cinch it down, and I'm on my way out. You know, I also use their carbon Speed Series climbing sticks. I got those brand new this year. Been using those all over bow hunting and gun hunting, from public land to private. Very lightweight, easy to carry, stackable sticks. I ended up putting cell strips on mine and using daisy chains. They compact very well, hang out of the bottom of my pack. And when I'm wearing the Method 2 saddle, I can easily pick any tree in the woods and hunt. Guys, if you're looking for a way to outfit your property without spending $200 per stand, like I'm gonna do on the new 40, I'm gonna prep a bunch of saddle trees and keep the deer guessing on where I'm sitting. They will not know my true stand location because I will not have one. Guys, saddles are very versatile. I urge you to check them out. Latitude Outdoors. Again, I've been using them for years and they are great products. Latitude Outdoors, thank you for supporting the Habitat Podcast. No, I love it. I love it. I just thought of a question there. And we talked about the property that you live on and own in the other episodes. Again, guys should go back to 23 and 136 on those. What are some of the favorite habitat projects that you've gotten your boys involved with?
So I'd say it's never been my favorite, but food plotting is probably my favorite to have the kids involved with, because they get to run a little bit of machinery. They get to see a much more immediate result from the work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we put seed in the ground and within a couple of weeks, we go back out and we're looking at little rows that are popping up and stuff. And so I would say working a food plot, putting seed in the ground and tending to that is probably the thing that I enjoy doing most with my kids. It's actually made food plotting a lot more fun for me because I enjoy it more, seeing them be involved in it. Food plotting to me is not, otherwise has never really been my like forte or my first love when it comes to habitat. I'm a big native guy. I can see what isn't there. And I get a lot of gratification and joy out of like running a chainsaw and releasing a body of timber, or planting trees that I think, that I'm not expecting to see really turn into much or provide a whole lot of benefit for at least 10 years. And I don't care. I mean, I still enjoy doing those practices probably more personally, but yeah, I would say the boys have gotten a little bit of a taste of all of it. They're still small enough, young enough. They're not running a chainsaw or doing much of that yet, but they love running a skid steer. They like running the tractor and doing some bush hogging or tilling and stuff. And we do most of our planning behind a side by side. So even my biggest food plot is a little over 3 acres, and we still plant it with a little drill that we pull behind a Polaris Ranger.
Nice.
So yeah, I've got a 4-row planter now for 3-point hitch on the tractor, and we haven't even used it yet. So
okay,
most of our food plot stuff has been 1/2 acre, 3/4 acre. We have one food plot that's, we only have one that's more than an acre, and it's about 3 acres. But they are starting to understand that, not all habitat is made in a matter of weeks. Some of it is like really, really long term. And so they've gotten to visit some properties with me over the years and seen projects that like really raw piece of timber or really ugly piece of, say, poorly established upland habitat, and then see one that looks really, really good. And we've talked about why, what are the differences here? This piece used to look like that before we did this to it, or the landowner did this to it, and so on. So I think they're starting, as they mature, they're starting to appreciate some of those projects that take a little bit longer to develop, but they haven't been in the game long enough to see one kind of start to finish, from I'll give you an example on that. My grandmother has a farm that used to be tillable ground and pasture ground, anything that wasn't timber. And it was probably about 14 years ago, something like that. She made the decision, after me like suggesting multiple times over the years, to convert her tillable ground, which she was just cash renting out at a pretty modest rate, convert it to CRP and plant all of it in native prairie grasses and a couple other small spots to plant in hardwood trees and shrubs and things like that. And I kind of drew up a plan for her on it, and I didn't expect her to go for it, but she did. And we planted 69 acres of native grasses and several acres of hardwood trees and shrubs and stuff. And my oldest was a toddler at the time. I mean, he was 1 year old. And we have photos of him walking around there, standing next to me and handing me trees that I'm sticking in the ground and planting. And last year we went shed hunting out there and walked through some of those areas, and the oak trees are 15 to 25 foot tall, and they're, this big around, and they're just, I said, you probably don't remember this. And I go back and look in my Facebook and I'm showing him pictures. I'm like, here, Riley, like, see this tree right here? I'm pretty sure that's where we're standing right now. And he was like, to see just in his lifetime, see something that was like that big around go to, something like that and have, he's like, wow, like that, you just stuck all those little pencil sized trees in the ground and now they're this big already. And that's just in my few short years. And like, yeah, it didn't happen overnight, but it doesn't happen at all if you don't do it. And so it's cool to get to see, for them to start recognizing transformations that happen like that.
That is cool. And I don't blame them with like in the food plot stuff first. I think everybody starts off at food plotting, right? I mean, you've been doing it long enough now to where what is more beneficial long term. You can see down the road, you have the vision.
That's what everybody wants to do.
Yep.
First thing that 95% of my clients want to do when they purchase a piece of land, they want to know, where do I put my box blinds or tree stands at? And where do I put my food plot? Like, okay, we'll talk about that, but really that's one of the last things I get to. It just, they have their place, and in a well-rounded, good quality recreational or hunting property, it's an important piece, of the puzzle. Like, you can add so much supplemental forage in a high quality food plot. There's just, it's just such a small footprint compared to what the overall property is in most cases. So that's what blows me out proportionately. Most people have 75% of their attention on a spot on their property that's less than a tenth, probably in some cases, less than 100th of the entire acreage. And I just don't get that at all. Like, what? We're just going to ignore the other 120 acres. We're going to focus on this half-acre food plot. Is that what we're going to do? Okay. But it's, I have grown to love food plots. And I think they have an awesome place in a well-rounded habitat, like I said, but I just think that most people miss so much of the what should be their first priority, because all of those other projects take so much more time to develop. You got to do the work and then wait for it to turn into something. Food plot, you put it in the ground and you're going to get results this year. You're not, but it's you can do that later and still make the schedule. Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I was just texting with a guy a few minutes ago before you hopped on about a plan I did in January with him. And food plots aren't until August, right? So I was, he's already had a logger out and walked the property with him. I'm like, dude, you are on the right path. Keep it up. And usually that's the first thing I say to probably like you too, like, get somebody in here, let's walk around with them in your timber and start the conversation there. You will learn so much that day with a forester, a logger, whomever it may be, somebody doing a plan. And it just opens your eyes to doing habitat year round versus right before deer season too.
For sure. Yep.
And on top of that, you're building more equity on these properties by doing this work. If you have a high graded piece of ground, no deer living there or wildlife's living there, it's not the same value as something that you put blood, sweat, and tears into for 5-10 years. So, you're doing that to your farm. You're advising your clients on what they need to do. What else are you doing on your farm or client farms, even consulting wise, to help make that ground more, I don't want to say profitable, that's a term, but give back more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. So we could all do more habitat work if our farms produced more revenue, so
right.
Timber management is a long-term strategy that most people are not employing at all. But if they are employing it, hopefully they're doing it effectively so that it can eventually become a sustainable source of quite a bit of revenue that really helps make a property more valuable, build equity in it, but then also just help it that much cash flow, that much better, so that they have future opportunities to add on to that farm. If you managed a good quality hardwood stand of timber, you should be able to get it to the point where every 7, 8, maybe 9 years, you should be able to come in and selectively cut trees. And let's say, depending on the size of the parcel, but in this area, if you had an 80 or 100 acre piece that was at least half timber. So you had 40, 50 plus acres of timber, and you were managing that. And every 8 years on average, you were able to come in and selectively cut some trees. You might be in today's market, you might be looking at being able to cut 25 to 40, maybe $50,000 worth of timber the landowners take each time that you do that. So if you could cut 40,000, let's say, every 8 years, you just added $5,000 worth of revenue annually on average to the farm. So producing that kind of money and being able to invest that back into access improvements, more tree plantings, or building a little cabin, adding power, doing some other improvements that add more equity into it, and building your net worth by enhancing the quality and the monetary value of that piece of real estate. Or you do a harvest and you kind of slap that thing in an account and you're letting it grow a little bit, so that when the guy next door with his 20-acre piece says, "Hey, I'm thinking about selling," boom, you got your down payment money right there. And it's so there are plenty of ways to make timber in a longer term landowner strategy become something that you can leverage that helps you kind of expand the empire a little bit. Um, the other thing that we see a lot of times when somebody buys, especially these mixed tracts, is they're not, most landowners are not getting the most they could be getting out of their tillable cash rent. And, a relationship is worth a lot. So I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and say farmers are, cheating people out of money. I mean, right now, like ag commodities kind of stink. Like it is, the margin is not fantastic for a lot of farmers right now. And we're just praying for them that they can kind of just hang in there and you weather through a storm where, with tariffs maybe costing 60 or 70 cents a bushel on their corn prices this year. And really, it's not a fantastic time probably in 2025 to talk to your landowner tenant about jacking up the cash rental rate on them. It's not going to be a fun conversation for either of you. But there are plenty of instances, plenty of occasions where somebody has had a tenant on a piece of ground for 15 years, 20 years, whatever, and the rate really hasn't hardly changed at all. And so for the last 8, 9, 10 years, that tenant has been getting it pretty good. They've been making really good money and paying pretty low cash rent and that sort of thing. Then the property sells, somebody buys this piece of land, and they have no idea, what. I'm not a farmer. I've never owned land. I don't know what this quality of dirt is worth or what somebody ought to be willing to pay. And so working with professionals that can help them, put them in touch with people who are really good stewards of the land, but also pay really competitive rates, is one thing that we often do. We also have some tools to do some online lease auctions and things like that and put it out for competitive bid and really help them make sure that they get top dollar. But even selecting amongst the high bidders to figure out which tenant they actually want to use doesn't necessarily have to go to the guy that offered you the highest price, but it brings out what is true fair market value for the cash rent in that area. And so there's a lot of times where I've seen farms just in the last 4 or 5 months that we've sold that somebody was maybe getting $130 to $175 an acre on ground that should have been bringing 270 to 325.
Wow.
And that's huge, so even if they gave somebody a pretty decent rate today and, rented it out for 250, there's still so much money ahead of where they would have been that it cash flows that much better. You got a lot of buying land today is not cheap. And if you're buying a predominantly a recreational type of property, something with a lot of wildlife habitat on it, you're not doing that to get rich. You're not doing that with in mind that this is going to be super high ROI. Like this is, going to be the smartest money investment I ever made. In the long term, hopefully it should be a very good part of your portfolio. It's very secure. It will never just up and evaporate the day the stock market takes a dump. It won't, go bankrupt on you. There's just, it's short of having a nuclear event happen in your area, that land is always going to go up in value. So it's not a bad long-term investment, but most of the money that you make owning that type of equity is never realized until the day it's sold.
Yeah.
So you're building equity, it's appreciating. But it's like investing in an IRA or something like that you're it's growing and hopefully becoming more and more valuable, but it's going to be 30 years before you touch it. So, it's not even not even real money until the day comes that you decide you're going to go sell it or
Yep.
cash it in or whatever.
No, that makes sense to me. Like my land isn't paying me anything every month while I'm dishing out the cash, right? But there are items like you mentioned with good forestry practice, CRP. There's programs that I've taken advantage of that I'm sure you've recommended, like quality forest programs, stuff like that, where you can lower your taxes at least. There's way to mitigate some of that stuff, making your land more even keel for you on the balance sheet. You talk to a lot of folks about homesteading, getting different personal operations going, small businesses, things like that. I want to hear more about some of those ventures on what you're doing. But real quick, if somebody wanted to go into homesteading, for lack of a better term, or just raising some cattle or something like that, what are some of the factors they'd want to consider when purchasing that ground?
Okay. So the main things they need to think about, what we generally tell people who are taking the deep dive into homesteading and like, I want to have a milk cow. I want to, I'm going to have some honeybees and have a big garden and do all these things. We generally tell them to think bigger than what they initially have in mind, because
Okay.
a lot of people, especially if they're coming out of town and this is going to be their first rural real estate purchase, they're thinking 5 acres, maybe sounds like a lot of land. We're like, what do you really have in mind? Well, tell me about your vision. What do you want on your homestead? Well, I might want some horses. Okay. That's going to take most of your 5 acres. What else? So when they start to really talk about what their vision includes, then we can kind of help them cue in on how many acres realistically they're going to want. When we're talking first time recreational buyers, the vast majority of those are faster turnover. Those
Okay.
are farms that most of those people are not going to own long term, or at least it won't be the only farm that they own. Most of them who are buying a property, a rural home, or a place to build a home, and they're starting from scratch, those are going to be longer term investments. Most of those, once they've gone to all the effort and all the work and created the dream from scratch, they don't want to have to start over. So we generally tell
Good
them,
point.
like, think bigger on your scope, because you then will have room to grow. You don't paint yourself into a corner and say, well, I really wanted to do this and this and this, but I only bought a piece that's 7 acres. And so I guess I'll never have cows. I'll never have, and it's like, if you think you might want to do that, then let's figure out how much ground it actually takes, and then what kind of ground in your area, how affordable is that? What are some ways to make it more affordable? And is it just a factor of we need to increase our supplemental income somehow? We got to work some side hustles, or we got to tap into some other source of revenue to help pay for this, or we just have to wait longer and delay gratification a little bit longer to save and be in a position. So that instead of buying 10 or 12, 15 or 20 acres, we're going to buy that 40 because you want to do this and this with it down the road, or you want your kids to maybe build a house on the same property that you're on. If that's part of the dream, guess what? They may have big goals too, and you're going to need a little bit more room to breathe, right? So the homesteading movement has been huge the last 10 years. And I'm located again in Illinois, which most people nationally are attuned to the fact that, like, Illinois seems to be a kind of a depressed real estate market, or taxes aren't great, and the state population is shrinking. More people are leaving Illinois than are moving into it every year, right? Have you heard that in Michigan? It seems like it's
No.
common knowledge. Okay.
I didn't know that. I do know the taxes are in Illinois are tough. I have some friends that live
Yeah.
there and I hunt there every
So
year. And yeah,
we're about third, about third from being the highest in the nation.
wow.
So for real estate taxes, and not every county is the same either. Like, we get that rap because there are a handful of counties that have astronomical real estate taxes. And then you get into more rural places, Warren County, Henderson County in my area, they're pretty darn reasonable. You hop
Okay.
across the river to Iowa and you'll pay more, so it's not, you paint with broad strokes basically when somebody starts saying Illinois is horrible for real estate.
Sure.
So there are certain areas, certain regions, even within our state, which is, a pretty big, pretty long, it's 6.5 or 7 hours to drive from the north end of the state to the south end state. So there's a lot of regionality, I guess, with regards to real estate, rural real estate affordability and property taxes. And I don't remember how exactly we got on this subject, but there's plenty of room for people still to move out of town and find an affordable place in the country in Western Illinois. And I've sold homestead type properties to people here from Florida and
Wow.
California and Missouri and Iowa, Michigan, and probably a couple more states. So like there are people still from other places that are coming here because we have great land, we have great soils, we have tremendous wildlife and hunting opportunities. And we have, actually pretty reasonable cost of living expenses. So even if our real estate taxes are a little bit higher than any of us would want them to be, they are. I don't care where you live. I think we all pay probably more in real estate taxes than we'd like to. Um, but the rural real estate market in my area is still really strong because for every person who's thinking about leaving Illinois, there are 3 more who are in town that just want to move to the country.
Got it.
So
Yeah. That's awesome. And I know the deer hunting isn't too bad there either, right? So your
no,
nice soils and nice farm ground around there. It's not bad.
no, we're pretty blessed that regard too. My kids are we have not traveled yet to hunt, and it's something we keep talking about doing. And they're like, Dad, why don't we go hunt deer in Missouri? That sounds like fun. I'm like, okay, some places in Missouri, that'd be cool. Dad, maybe we should go to Oklahoma. And I'm like, well, there's some good deer hunting in Oklahoma, but
Some places.
yeah, it's like not all of them. I mean, most of them, maybe not. I don't, they're they start to they catch the bug a little bit when they see me scrolling through Facebook or something, and somebody shoots a big buck in Kansas, or somebody shoots and I'm like, oh wow, look at that one. And they have no idea how good we have it here because they only see the highlight reel in other states, and they're like, well, that guy shot a 180 and he's in Michigan, Dad. I'm like, yeah, that's like 1 in 10 million. Like, that's just no,
Yes.
that's pretty amazing for that area. And here it's like, well, you're looking at those on trail camera kind of regularly, but
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. You guys are at a cool spot. I think raising my kids in Michigan where they'll get a little bit more frostbit toes before they shoot a 180 type thing going on, that we'll be able to start traveling and get out there and see out west and stuff. But
mhm.
no, that's pretty awesome. I guess what I was getting at with all that is some of your guests that you interview and your clients, they're not just deer hunters. They're not just people who want to buy rut ground to hunt deer, which I
No.
find interesting, even though that's kind of why I do it. The homesteading, the cattle, the farming, all
Mhm.
that. And maybe I'll get back to that question. Like, you're doing some more stuff. You bought another piece of property in your local town, correct?
Yeah. So this is where marriage will take you in life. You will have many dreams that are unified and are the same all the way through. And then you will have other dreams that's like, well, that's just kind of more my dream. And she's, doing everything in her power to go along with it and to help us get there. And sometimes it's her dream that we're chasing and whatever. And life is like that. And so like we kept driving by this old opera house building in this small town it isn't even actually the town of our address, but we're only like 5 miles from it as a crow flies. So we drive through it like sometimes multiple times a day, and we turn the corner and drive past this building, and she kept talking about it. What a cool old building. What a cool piece of history. Somebody should do something with that. And I said it too multiple times. Like it's beautiful, and it's just, it's one of those throwback gems, a piece of history that's just kind of sitting there, collecting cobwebs or whatever. And finally, one day we're driving by it and she says, I got an idea for that building. And I was like, whoa, this is new. That's different. But we did. We took the plunge a little over 2 years ago, and we bought this 10,000 square foot opera house building that's got a bunch of different spaces and stuff in it. And just we walked through it and we just let our dreams kind of run wild. And we're like, well, what could we do with that? And we now have the Mercantile. We've dubbed the entire facility Prairie Crossroads.
Cool.
And yeah, it's the crossroads of Mercer County. So 2 main highways that dissect our whole county pass right through here, and we're right on the 4-way stop. And we have such a passion for prairie that we feel like it's something that people can get behind and get excited about, and makes cool branding elements and all that sort of thing. But it gives us an opportunity to constantly talk to people about prairie. And so the Mercantile is Jackie's store, and it's a lot of farm fresh goods. It's at least 50% or more of it is locally grown or produced goods. So we sell locally raised beef. We sell farm fresh honey. We sell farm fresh eggs. We sell a lot of grocery type products, and then seasonally we sell like watermelons that are grown here just outside of town, and cantaloupe and sweet corn and peppers and zucchinis and all that stuff. So we're networking, or she's networking with all of these local producers, these homesteaders who produce in abundance. They really are good at maybe growing rhubarb or blackberries or peaches or apples or something, and more than they need, but not so much probably that they want to go and sit at a farmer's market every weekend and try to
Right.
peddle it or whatever. So we're able to, they keep coming in and bringing us this stuff and like, here, would you try these? Are they, you think they're good? Is this something you would sell here in the mercantile? And so, I mean, eventually as she grows that, we'd love it to have a very steady supply of locally grown farm fresh produce and other goods. And for now, it's like, it's a little bit of a, I don't know, it's almost like a sampling. Every time when somebody comes in, it's like, we don't maybe have a lot of that, but we have some, and it goes like that, you know, and people come in and they're just like, whoa, I didn't know you guys sold this. It's like, well, we do this week. Yeah, we don't know what we'll have next week. And it's a really cool vision she's got. And she's deep down the homesteading rabbit hole and pretty involved in that circle online and stuff, and really loves what those people are all about. And so many of those people come in and connect with us online and stuff at the mercantile. And just it's neat to see people how they're using their land and their footprint, whether it's 3 acres or 30 acres or 300 or whatever, and they're growing a product, and we're giving them a marketplace for that locally, because there's so much of what people consume that you buy at the grocery store that still comes from overseas, or comes from Mexico, or comes from wherever. And as tariffs continue to impact more and more of that, the cost of the grocery store keeps going higher and higher. And while people are going to the big box grocery stores and paying $8.50 or $9 for a dozen eggs, they can come here and there's still $4 or less.
Wow.
It's because they traveled 3 miles to get here. You know, that it's kind of absurd how our food system has gotten to the point where so much of what we buy and use has to travel 1,000+ miles to get to us. Well, how did you think it was not going to be expensive? Like,
Right.
but we've done that for sake of volume. You know, if you want tomatoes in January, you're probably going to have to go pretty far south to go get them, you know? So there's definitely some of that comes into play. Sorry. So that's part of what the mercantile does and is about. There's going to be other spaces that come into this building that are one space directly above the mercantile we're currently renovating, and that's what I told you about before we started here. It looks like I'm in a walk-in closet right now, and I'm like,
oh, you're not?
Yeah, temporarily camping in an apartment space in this building because we have high-speed internet, because because I keep shuffling around from one space to the other in this building while we're finishing up our land loft space. But when it's done, it will be really cool. You know, kind of brings in a lot of the old history of the character with like 11-foot stamped 10 ceilings, and just, you know, it's cool architecture, but it will be a really neat place for people who are swinging through the area to stop in and come and sit behind a mic and record with us, talk to more landowners, talk to people like doing what we're doing now, and just reaching a bigger audience, hopefully.
No, that's awesome, man. That's quite the leap, buying an old building in town and seeing what you can do with it there. And you guys are introducing ice cream here pretty soon as well, right?
We have hand scooped ice cream right now in the mercantile.
Nice.
And we're also renovating another space directly below where I'm at now. So that at the end of spring, we'll open that up as a full ice cream shop. So it'll be kind of old school 1930s, 40s era soda shop vibe in there. And it's just, you know, it's a throwback to kind of a nod to the history of the building, and people in the area are just like super pumped about it. And to have, you know, a really high quality, you know, small mom and pop operation, like a super premium ice cream, and they can come in and it's nostalgic, you know, people are kind of hungry for that. They like it's anybody, you can go to any fast food restaurant, you know, and get a Blizzard or, you know, McFlurry or whatever, something like that. But it's just a different experience, and it's a totally different product. So people get excited about it for sure.
So do all these ideas and ventures that you have going on within the land and the new building in town, do they all have to pencil out, or is it more of a nostalgia idea? Hey, that'd be fun. Let's do it. A mix of both. how do you decide? Like, how do you decide to do ice cream?
Well,
I'm curious on that.
yeah, I'm going to dispel any rumors right now, if there ever were any, that we have very much money or that, that we're wealthy. That is not the case. So, do they have to pencil out? Yeah, at some point they have to. When you start down a path like this, you do as much due diligence and research as you can. You try to figure out at what point, hopefully, you hope to become profitable. But you have to be willing to really gut it out and, know that you might be donating your own time for a long time until you get to the point where growth is there and there's enough cash flow that, like, okay, now we can start paying ourselves on this, or now we can, the reward longer term. Yes, we would expect that it's going to be profitable business in the short term. You just have to keep doing whatever incrementally, slowly keeps working to get you there, because it is not, it's just a different business model entirely than what we're used to and what most people
Sure.
around here, is money the primary driver for us to take on some of these things? No. Should it
No,
be?
it's
I don't,
cool.
maybe.
It's just pretty cool.
It's just not like
Yeah.
so we have 2 young kids. We, for better or worse, we are plagued with this entrepreneurial spirit. And if we can bestow anything on them as far as education goes, we want it to be that you can make your own way in life. You can go get a job for somebody else or some big company or whatever. You can, and reap the rewards of that, and steady pay, salary, benefits, all that good stuff. And I would not try to steer them away from that, but I want them to know that they don't have to do that. Like, if they want to do their own thing, if they want to grow their own company, their own business, they can, and they'll know that because they've seen us do it. Now, like, did I ever think I would be in the ice cream business? Nope. No, I did not. But you can do it, and they've just in the last couple of years, they've seen us start with an idea and develop it, build a brand out of it, and start a company from nothing and renovate a space to do it in and then do it. And I think there's so many life lessons in that, like, they will take that kind of, I mean, so that is one of the places that I expect to get a really high return on investment. And that will be watching them 20 years from now, seeing what they do with their lives, what they do with growing some kind of a business or a company or an idea or whatever. And I'll say that investment we made back there when we were kind of losing our, day to day, week to week, losing our minds and maybe losing our butts a little bit here and there on some of these, money that we were spending in and dumping into something. It's like, that's where it should really pay off. In the short term, I would say the biggest benefit or the biggest return on investment we get is from the community support. We are in a small town of people that are ecstatic about what we're doing. So most of them they don't even really know each other that well, or they don't talk to each other on a day-to-day basis, but they see what we're doing and they get excited about it and they talk to each other about it, and it gives them a positive outlook on their own little town. It gives them a
That's
reason
great.
to, think that, like, somebody's doing something here. This is exciting. And so then they want to get behind it and they want to be a part of it and they want to do their own thing alongside of it. And that's pretty cool too.
It's extremely cool. I think the life lessons you're teaching your kids, nobody ever taught me about that stuff growing up, and my daughters and son are learning some of the same stuff with some of the stuff that we do here. And like my daughter last night was making do you know what lip scrub is? Sugar lip scrub?
I
Yeah,
can't say I do.
I didn't either, but now I'm helping her start, or she's slinging lip scrub at school now. So it's kind
Okay.
of fun. And she's getting orders from kids and coming home and making it. And that's just, I was kind of a little bit proud of that, and my
Yeah.
son, he likes to grow pumpkins with me up at the cabin. We're gonna put a bunch more in this year. We only had like 4 last year because the soil's pure sand, but we're gonna try that again this year. And just these ideas that you're doing, and like you
Mhm.
said, and not getting rich off it, pulling your hair out from it, a lot of work. But I do agree that somebody needs to be teaching these kids this kind of stuff, because I don't see a lot of it. So
Yeah.
good for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of the reasons, same reasons we do a lot of the homestead stuff, livestock. I mean, we're not getting wealthy from having what few cattle we have either. And takes a lot of work every day and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of life lessons, a lot of values in it, just memories, a lot of
Yeah.
experience that, like, they're not going to grow up on a cattle ranch, but when they grow up, they will have an appreciation for what it takes to raise beef or to, raise any livestock. They'll have a much better appreciation for where their food comes from and what it takes to produce it. And I just think like those are the connections to land that you only get by living on it and dealing in those types of things on a daily basis. You can read about it later, you can watch some stuff on YouTube, but if you've lived it and you've done it daily and you did the chores and you put the garden in the ground and did all those things, then you respect it and you enjoy it just because when the fruits of the labor, when it comes to like actually cooking a meal with our own beef or having a lot of garden fresh items on the plate, they're just like, wow, this is pretty cool. Like this tastes really good. This tastes way better than the stuff at the store, or this tastes better than it was at that restaurant we ate at that cost $40 last week. They already at 13 and 15, they recognize those things. And so I think it's cool that, if you live in the country or you have a little bit of land, you have that opportunity. Not everybody's taking advantage of that opportunity, but they're missing the boat if they're not, in my opinion.
Yep. And that's what I want to get you on here. I wanted people to think a little bit more outside the box on what you can get out of your land, your investment, your passion. I'll hit you with one more before we wrap. I want to be respectful of your time.
Yep.
Besides the very first episode, which tells people about your podcast and the people behind it, what's one of your favorite episodes so far that you've recorded? You hit me with this question when I was on your show 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't ready for it, so I'm giving it right back.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a great question. I should have thought of that.
I should have given you a heads up.
No, probably good that you didn't. So we've had some pretty fun, pretty interesting, and like really diverse guests on so far. I always love talking habitat and land management with people, but I would say one thing I enjoy more than that is land stories. And so actually hearing how somebody became a landowner or what much it meant to them, because that's probably my favorite part of my job, is getting to hear from landowners who like are on in years and they're thinking about selling a tract and whatever, that, what owning that farm has meant to them over the decades, or that it, handed down to them from their dad, their grandpa, whatever. And hearing that what we call the land story is really, really cool. And probably one of my favorite land stories so far from a guest is actually from a friend of ours that is Shay Litweiler. So he was one of our early episodes, still one of my favorites because such a cool story. He's now, he's really getting into regenerative ag now, but he's kind of taken over a family row crop operation, and he was raised in town. Married a gal that grew up on this row crop farm and they had cattle and stuff. And he was a city cop and had like no experience with that stuff until he was like, well into his 20s. And then tragically, his mother-in-law passed away, in kind of untimely manner, and everything changed, the whole family dynamic. And the very next day he had to step in, like take off work from being the police officer and start feeding cows and calving like the next day. And so it was just like immediately thrust into it. And he's like a city greenhorn. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And like to hear him tell his story is just, it's cool. I mean, again, sad how it first came about, but we don't know and understand God's plan for our lives. And when something like changes like that, and he just like fully embraced it and just said, like within a week, he's looking at himself like, I guess I'm a farmer now. Like I better figure out how to do this, and he has learned so much just in the last few years by being surrounded by a community of other farmers, cattle people. So like, and now like you met him, talked to him, seen what he does day to day. You'd think he'd been doing it. You'd think he comes from 3 or 4 generations of it because he's sharp. He's really good at what he does. And it's cool, how far somebody can come in a short time like that. With their knowledge about land and all things, agriculture. But probably still one of my favorite episodes, just because we call that one the genesis of a farmer. And I don't know very many people that have a land story like that. And it's just, the people who are out here working the ground, whether it's hunting land or homesteaders or farmers, ranchers, whatever, they don't all come from multiple generations of it. There are some of them that just carved their way into it by their own will and, bloodshed tears. But There are others that just kind of fell into it one day and had to figure it all out. But I don't know. It's really cool.
Yeah, that was a great episode. So keep up the good work, Chase. I appreciate you coming on. Why don't we wrap up with you telling everybody where they can find you, find the podcast, and maybe a message to leave us with.
Absolutely. So we have a website, landyourground.com. Mostly we direct people to YouTube. So subscribe to the Land Your Ground YouTube channel if you haven't. We'd love to have you as part of our tribe. Follow us on any of the socials. Of course, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and it's at Land Your Ground is the handle in all of those. So reach out to us with a DM or post in the comments on your favorite episode. Ask us questions. Like, that's the goal, really, is maximize engagement. We are trying to build a community of people who are here to support each other around the whole idea of land ownership and becoming a landowner and growing your holding and all of that. So there are a lot of awesome people in this, and we've had some really fantastic guests. We got a lot of really, really good guests coming in yet this year. So there's going to be a whole lot of good information and a lot of fun stories coming at you soon there. So come and find us.
Awesome, Chase. Thanks for your time today, man. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you for tuning in to the Habitat Podcast. We really do appreciate you guys coming back every week to get this awesome Habitat content. And we would appreciate it if you went to iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast, and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us continue to grow and trend in the right direction, attract new listeners, and help us provide better content in the future. Guys, we have a website full of resources. We have a blog on the website. We have YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all linked up at habitatpodcast.com. Our land plan services, merchandise, decals, hats, t-shirts, and I give away a free 5-inch decal to anyone who leaves us a review on Apple iTunes. Really appreciate it. I want to thank our partners, Downburst Cedars, Vitalize Seed Company, Morse Nursery, Packer Max Cultipackers, Stealth Outdoors, First Light Latitude Outdoors, United Country Midwest Lifestyle Properties, and Exodus Outdoor Gear. Thanks again, guys. We'll be back next week with another great episode of the Habitat Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.